Hello and welcome to another Python Game Making for Beginners tutorial. I'm really excited about this video because in this one we're going to get started into our first project, which is a guess the number game. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of what we're going to try to accomplish, and then we're going to get right into setting up our project and getting into code. And not only that, but I'm going to show you two different ways that we can accomplish this by using two different programming paradigms. So a programming paradigm is a concept we haven't really discussed yet, but it's just a method of programming. Different programming languages can use different types of programming paradigms, and Python is what's called a multi-paradigm programming languages, meaning that, as you might guess, there are multiple different programming paradigms that it uses. So the first one that we're going to use is an imperative programming paradigm, which is basically what we've used thus far. So imperative means you just have a list of instructions and you run through those instructions from top to bottom, and that's it. After that, we're going to try it using a functional programming paradigm, which is where we're going to use functions, which we worked on in our last couple of videos. We're going to create our own functions, and then we're going to call those functions in different orders. So that way you can kind of jump around in your code a little bit, and you'll kind of see the strengths and weaknesses of these two different paradigms as we go forward. So after this video, we're probably going to go ahead and do one, maybe two more projects, and then after that, we're going to get into our third programming paradigm, which is object-oriented programming, which is very, very powerful. So I'm really looking forward to getting into that. But first, let's go ahead and talk through our project. So this is going to be a guess the number game. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to have the program randomly select a number within a given range. Like we're going to probably start with a number from 1 to 10, but you can do 1 to 100, 1 to 1,000, pretty much whatever you want. Just bear in mind that the larger the number, the more difficult the game is going to be. So after it randomly selects a number, we're going to have the player guess the number, and the program is going to let us know whether the number that we guessed is too high or too low. And when you guess the correct number, it's going to tell you that the guess was correct and tell you how many tries it took you to arrive at the correct answer. So with that, let's go ahead and jump right in. So I've got Visual Studio Code open. I'm going to go ahead and create a new file. We're going to do Python programming language, and let's go ahead and save this. I'll save it to the desktop for now. We're going to call this guess the number. There we go. Alright, so we know that we're going to use the random function to select a random number, so if you need a refresher on the random function, be sure to check out my previous video on that. I will link to that above, but for now we're going to go ahead and import that, and we're going to do it a little bit differently this time than we did last time. So from last time, we just said import random, and then when we called that function, we had to do random dot rand range and so on and so forth. So in Python and other programming languages, there is a concept called namespace. Your namespace is basically all of the functions and methods that you have available to you. So there are a number of them that are automatically in your namespace, such as the print function or the different string methods that we did earlier. Like those are in your namespace by default. So if I say import random, that's going to import every single function and every single method in the random module, which is going to increase our namespace. So the more things that you have in your namespace, your program can start to run a little bit more slowly, or it can get a little bit more convoluted. It might bump up, it might be more difficult to name things because you might accidentally name something that already exists in your namespace. So if you know you're only going to use one or two functions or methods from a certain module, you can only import those methods. And that will also make it where you don't have to put the random dot name of the function or method. You can just put the name of the function or method. So that's what we're going to do on this one. So instead of importing the entire random module, we know that we're only going to use the rand range function. So I'm going to say from random import rand range. So now the only function that I've imported from random is the randrange function. That's it, nothing else, because that's the only one that we're going to need. Alright, after that we're going to go ahead and declare some variables. So we're going to put in our low number, the lowest number that our randrange function could possibly be. We also need the high number. We need the number of tries that the player has tried to guess the number. We also need a variable for their current guess, whatever number they're guessing, and then the answer. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do low number, and right now we'll just set that equal to 1. High number, we'll set that equal to 10. Tries is going to start at 0. Guess, we're going to do something different with guess. We're going to set this to an empty value. And in order to set that to an empty value, different programming languages have different keywords. Some of them it's null. For Python, it's going to be none. So none with a capital N. That just means that there is no value assigned to that variable right now. That variable exists, but again, nothing assigned to it. And then answer. So this is the random number between 1 and 10. And we're going to set this, so like I said before, we're going to select a random number between our low number and high number. And we don't have to call random.randrange anymore. It actually doesn't like it when I do that. All we have to do is type in randrange because we only imported that one function, so we don't have to do the random dot. And we're going to do low number, high number, plus 1. So a couple of things that we did here. First of all, we're using the randrange function, and we're selecting a random number between our low number variable and our high number variable plus 1. So remember that when you do the randrange function, this range is non-inclusive, meaning that it will do the low number to the high number, not including the high number. So what I did is I just added 1, so it's going to include the high number when we do that. So low number is 10. Normally, if I did that, it would be 1 to 10 non-inclusive, which means the number could only be 1 through 9. But now it can actually be 1 through 10. And the reason that I didn't put the numbers directly in here is because if we want to change these, all we have to do is change our variables. We don't have to go and change them in this function. That just makes our lives, might make our lives a little bit easier down the road. Alright, so that is all of our variables. The next thing we're going to do is get into the actual game. So we're going to go ahead and print a welcome message to the player. So we're going to say print. And what I want to do on this is I want to say welcome to guess the number. Or my guess the number game, or whatever, however you want to do that. But I want the name of the game in quotation marks. And of course, you know that if you put quotation marks, that denotes a string. So there are a couple of ways that we can do this. If we want to use double quotes, then we can put our string in single quotes. And we can say, you know, welcome to guess the number, like that. And then that will be part of the string. So the double quotes, you can't put really a string inside of a string. We could also put double quotes out here and then put that in single quotes, and that will also work. But I'm going to show you one more way of doing this using something called an escape character. So normally, if we did, like let's say I wanted to do double quotes and then double quotes inside of that. Now it thinks that I'm ending the string if I type in guess the number. But there are some extra functions that we can put in strings by using an escape character, which our escape key is the / key, which should be right between your enter and backspace key on a standard keyboard. But if you do that, there are different functions that you can do, like if you do /t, that will do a tab in your text. If you do \n, that's a new line. That means it will go down to the next line. But what we want to do is we want to use that for a double quote. So if I do \double quotes, I escape the double quotes. So now it doesn't try to end the string, but it will actually print the double quotes within my string. So I hope that makes sense. We'll go over that in a little bit more depth, probably in a future tutorial, in a future video, but I think that'll be just fine for now. But just know that if you do \double quotes, then when I print that to the console, it's just going to print the double quotes, and that's it. Alright, so let's say, welcome to guess the number, and that string, and I'm just going to create a couple of new lines, so we're just going to give a brief overview of the instructions, the goal of the game, so in this one I didn't have to escape the single quote there, or the apostrophe rather, because that's within double quotes. So it considers that part of the string. Let's go ahead. Actually, let's do... There we go. Here, let's say, let's get started. Alright, so that is our introduction. So the next thing I'm going to do is set up a while loop. So we're going to say while, excuse me. So we're going to say while guess, this is the player's guess, is not equal to answer. And then we're going to run this loop. So the next thing we need to do is we need to take input from the player. That is going to be their guess. So guess equals input. I'm going to use my F string here. Guess a number between low number and high number. So now you're seeing again why I put these in variables instead of just putting that inside the rand range, because then if we wanted to change these numbers, everywhere we use those numbers, we would have to go and input them manually, but by storing them in variables, we can just call the variables, and if we want to change them, we just have to change them each in one spot, and that's it. Alright, and then after they guess, we're going to add to our tries using our shortcut that we did before, tries plus equals 1, so that just takes our tries and adds 1 to it. And then we're going to use an if statement to check whether the number is too high, too low, or whether it's correct. So on this one, we can't say if guess is less than answer. Think about that for a moment. Pause the video and see if you can work out on your own why this won't work. Alright, so the reason this won't work is because, remember, whenever you do input, it always takes it as a string. We can't compare a string to a number, and this one is going to be a number variable. So I've got to convert that to an integer in place. And the way that we do that is do int, and then put that variable name in parentheses. There we go. So now, just for the purposes of this one statement, it's going to treat guess as an integer. Alright, so we'll say int guess is less than answer. Print that number is too low. Try again. If int guess is greater than answer, print. Ooh, man, can't type today. There we go, that number is too high. Try again. If int guess is equal to answer, print. That's right. You win. And we're going to print a winning message. It only took you tries. There we go. And then I, usually if there's something like this where I want to end the loop, just in case something is a little bit weird with our while loop, I'd like to go ahead and put in an extra statement. This is break. So that means when it gets to this point, it will break out of the loop and go to the next section. This isn't always necessary, but I like to go ahead and put that in if I know I need to break out of the loop there, just in case. And then we're going to print, thank you for playing. There we go. And that's pretty much it. So when we run this program, it's going to declare the variables. It's It's going to print our welcome message. Then it's going to check and see if the guess is equal to answer, or whether actually it's going to check and see whether it isn't equal to answer. And right now there is no value in there, so it will not evaluate as equal to, so it's going to go into our while loop. It's going to take input from our player. It's going to add 1 to our tries, which right now are at 0, so the minimum number of tries you can possibly have is 1. Then we're going to run our if statement. If guess is less than answer, it's too low. If it's greater than answer, it's too high. If it's equal to the answer, that's right. Tell us how many tries. Break. Thank you for playing the end. So if it's too low or too high, then it's going to repeat that while loop. It's going to keep doing that until guess equals to answer evaluates to true, in which case it's going to end the game. So let's go ahead and run that real quick. I'm going to hit my play button, and it's going to run down here at the bottom, and there it is. Welcome to Guess the Number. The goal of the game is to guess what number I'm thinking of in the fewest guesses possible. Let's get started. Guess a number between 1 and 10. So we'll try 5. That number is too low, so let's do 9. Too high. 7. Too high, so that means it can only be 6. That's right, you win. It only took you 4 tries. Thank you for playing, and then it ends. And that is pretty much our first thing that we could call a game. Very simple, very basic game, yeah, but it works. Alright, so what are a couple of problems with this? The first big problem is that you can only play the one game one time and then it's done. Then if we want to play it again, we've got to restart the program and run the whole thing from the beginning. So that is our main issue with this, and we can fix that by switching our paradigm to functional programming, and that's what we're going to do right now. So I'm going to go ahead and open a new file. Let's go to, there we go, Python, and I'm going to save this as guess the number functional. All right. So on this one, we've got an extra import that we're going to do. From random, we'll go ahead and do the one we did before. Import rand range. And then from sys, import exit. So sys, S-Y-S, that is the system module, and it lets us do different things at the system level. Exit is a function that just exits the program. So we'll be able to tell the program to exit at a very specific time when we want to. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to end up defining 3 functions in this. So we're going to have a start function, which is going to begin the game. And I'm just going to put pass in that for right now. We'll define that function in a moment. We're going to have a main game loop. And we are going to have a play again function. So the start function is the one we're going to run at the very beginning. That's going to give us our welcome message, and then it's going to call the main game loop. The main game loop is where we're going to initialize the game, we're going to declare our variables, and we're going to run the while loop. So that is our main game loop. Then, when we win the game, it's going to call the play again function, and that's going to ask the player whether or not they want to play another game. If they do, then it's going to rerun the main loop. If not, then it's going to exit the program. So this part, we've already done most of this, so I'm going to go through this kind of quickly, and I'm actually going to just copy and paste part of it. So let's go ahead and take our welcome message. Ooh, actually, there's something cool you can do in Visual Studio Code. If I hit this button up here, then it lets me have kind of side-by-side windows. There we go. So now I've got my old program on the right and then my new program on the left. All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste that in here. My formatting's a little messed up, so I'm going to highlight that and tab it over. There we go. So at the end of those print statements, we're going to call the main loop. So remember, when we call a function, you just have to put the name of the function and then the parentheses. You don't have to put DEF. That's only when you're defining a function. All right, and then in our main loop, we're going to go ahead and declare our variables. So I'm just going to copy these over. Let's fix that formatting again. There we go. And then our while loop is going to be more or less the same. So let's copy that one over. We are going to make a couple of changes to it. Oh, there we go. And let me tab that one over. There we go. That is our while loop. So in my main loop, we've got all of our variables. Then our while loop. And again, be sure you mind your tabs. So the variables are tabbed one level, and then the while loop, we got a tab over there, and then tab each of the if and elif statements on all of those. And that one is going to be pretty much the same, but our last elif, if we win, instead of breaking out of that loop, we're going to call the play again function. And this is going to be a new part. Alright, and this is what we're going to do here. We're going to say we're going to create a new variable called play again. And we're going to take an input from the player. Would you like to play again? And then I'm going to put in a parentheses and a y/n because we're just looking for either a y or an n, and that's it. Then we're going to check to see what that input is. If play again is equal to y, be sure to use your single quotes there. There we go. So if they want to play again, all we're going to do is run the main loop again. If play again is equal to string in, print thanks for playing. And then we're going to run our exit function. So again, exit is a function of the sys module. So we have to put exit and then the parentheses so it knows that's a function, and then it exits the game. Alright, so if I run this game right now, nothing's going to happen. At least not apparently. What's actually going to happen is it's going to import these two modules, it's going to define all of these functions, and then that's it. It's not actually going to do anything with those functions. So from our perspective, nothing happens. We just get a command line and boom, it's done. So what we have to do is we've got to call this start function. So after we define all of our functions, down here, we're just going to call start, and that is going to begin the whole thing. Now, it's going to import our modules, it's going to define all of these functions, then we call the start function. And that's when everything is set into motion. It goes through all of that, does our print statements, runs the main loop, does our while loop. When we win, it's going to call the play again function, and then we can either choose to play again or not. Alright, so let's go ahead and run that now. Here we go. Let's get started. Guess the number between 1 and 10. Let's do 5. That number is too high. 3. Too low, so that means it can only be 4. Alright, you win. It only took you 3 tries. Play again. Yes or no? Let's say yes. There we go. So let's try again. So now 5. Too low. So notice it picks a different number this time because we redeclared all of those variables. 7, 8, 9. And then if I say no, thanks for playing, and it terminates the program. So that is Guess the Number game using functional programming. Functional programming is a little bit trickier at first, but once you wrap your mind around it, it's going to save us a whole lot of time and a whole lot of code later on. So if I tried to do this in this one, like basically every time we run it, I've got to reprint this code again or have it like jump to new lines or crazy things like that. But this one, all you have to do is set it up to where it, calls the correct functions at the right times. And later on, when we do programs where we're going to use the same functions over and over again, all we have to do is just call that function. It takes a few characters, one line of code, and that's it. We don't have to type that code all over again, but we'll get into that kind of stuff soon enough. All right, and even now, this program isn't perfect. There are ways that it can be expanded, and there are also different kinds of errors that we can worry about fixing. So I encourage you to take this program and try to expand it a little bit. What are some things that we can do with this? The first glaring problem that I see with this is that right now, if play again is equal to y, or if play again is equal to n, what if the player puts in a different character? Like, what if they put in a number? Or what if they put in a letter besides Y or N? Or what if they put in multiple errors or multiple numbers? That will probably cause an error in our program. So that's one thing that could be fixed. Maybe you could check to make sure that they put in either a Y or N. And if they don't, then you can say, please enter Y or N. And then have it run that again until they enter either a Y or N for yes or no. Maybe you could have it to where they could put in a Y or N, or they could actually type out yes or no. That's another thing that you can do. Something else that might be interesting is to implement difficulty levels, like have it where they can select easy, medium, or hard, and if it's easy, maybe the number is between 1 and 10, they put it on medium difficulty, it's between 1 and 50, and then on hard, it's between 1 and 100, or even higher numbers. You can do pretty much whatever you want. So again, some really cool ways to expand this. I would be really eager to see what you would do with this program. So be sure to leave me a comment below if you have any ideas for it, or if you want me to see some of your code. I would really love to check those out. In the meantime, be sure to hit the like button on this video if you got something out of it, or if you learned something today, or if you enjoyed it. And hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and the notification bell so you never miss one of my new videos. Got some really great stuff on the way. And with that, we will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.